I'm very pleased to welcome Rania Llewellyn, CEO of Laurentian Bank, and James Bradshaw of the Globe and Mail to the virtual summit stage.
Hello and welcome. I'm delighted to have you here today and to have a chance to speak to two very impressive leaders. Rania, thank you for joining us. Tracey, thanks for hosting us. I want to make the most of our time, so I'll dive right in. And I thought we could start big picture and talk a little bit about leadership, because we all know very well what companies and their employees have been through this last year. And you're both in a bit of a unique position in that you've both spent, most of the entirety of your time as the CEO of your organizations during a global pandemic. Can we just start broadly by talking a little bit about the most important lessons you've learned about how to lead an organization in such an unusual and difficult environment? Maybe Tracey, you can kick us off.
Well, the most important thing, I don't know, there have been so many things, James. It's been a crazy ride. But I think the most important thing for any company over the last 12 to 14 months has been the people and making sure that the people are looked after, because at the end of the day, it's the people that make your company. And so we've been very proactive at Payments Canada. I'm sure, Rania's been in a similar situation. I actually knew the organization that I was joining as CEO because I worked at Payments Canada beforehand. But there are a lot of people that I hadn't met or hadn't spent a lot of time with. And it was important that people felt connected and that they felt supported. And everybody's experience in COVID is different, and acknowledging that has been important, I think, for all companies, and Payments Canada is no different, to create that sense of connection and to maintain that sense of connection, even though we're all interacting like this through a video screen. So, looking after the people, making sure that people feel supported and appreciated has really been a priority.
Thanks. Rania, what can you tell us about what you've learned about how to lead quite a large organization through this period?
Yeah, so I'd like to start by thanking Tracey for having me today at the Payments Canada Summit, and James for moderating the session. So as you both know, not only have I been leading through COVID, but I actually joined an organization that I didn't know a single soul in at Laurentian Bank, October 30th of 2020, having left an organization that I knew inside and out for the last 26 years. So that's been an interesting challenge. And I would say, there's obviously common themes similar to what Tracey was saying. We're all in the people business, and ultimately we need to make sure that our people feel connected and engaged and so on. But I would say, deliberate communication. I think we, historically, the way we communicated was very differently before COVID. You had town halls, you can communicate in writing, you can walk the floors. But as a leader, in this virtual setting, setting some time aside, making sure your communication style is very deliberate. There's a lot of one-on-ones. Doing skip-a-level meetings. So making sure you're connecting with people in different ways and at different times is absolutely crucial. So I would say that's been extremely important. The other thing too, from a leadership perspective, is I think we've all had to learn and adapt. So that having that growth mindset, that curious mindset, so adapting our styles as leaders to better serve different constituents. So it's also customers, clients. How do you stay in touch with stakeholders? So not just employees, has made us grow and learn in using different platforms, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So I'd say, we've learned that, leading in a pandemic, you're looking for different leadership styles. Communication's critical. Being authentic as a leader is critical. And so I think we continue to learn. And I think there are certain things that we're going to probably continue to do going forward after COVID ends as well.
Well, that's a good segue to talk a little bit about the shift that this might bring about more permanently, because I think one of the big questions on everybody's mind is, from the pretty dramatic changes we've seen over the last, 14 months or so, how much of that is really permanent and how much of that, maybe there are areas where we slide back to old habits or old ways of doing things. When you think about, the way remote work has changed, how has that changed about the way you think about the people in your organization, the way you deploy them, the way you hire and recruit them, the way you manage talent generally? Do you want to start us off, Rania?
Sure, absolutely. So again, like I said, I joined the organization. I had to fill a number of key vacant positions at my leadership table, people that I've never actually even met physically. And so interview processes were done virtually. My selection process was done virtually. I don't even know, what they physically look like other than, from the shoulder up. And so that's been an interesting exercise, which really supports, from many perspectives, the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And so going kind of back to your core values of how you recruit and look for talent. So I think that's going to change the way we recruit. Also, in terms of hiring people remotely. Like I haven't had a chance to go visit any of our branches in Montreal yet. I was recruited. I've recruited people in Montreal. I've recruited people in Toronto. And again, people I haven't met before. So I think it'll open up a whole new talent pool for us to start thinking differently about, where do we physically need to have our talent located? So I think that's a question and that's a strategy that all organizations, including us at Laurentian Bank, are thinking about. The other thing too, to be honest, there are some silver lining in terms of working from home. I've been able to virtually meet almost, all of my employees in a very short period of time versus having to spend a lot of time, getting on planes, going to physically meet people. So there are efficiencies to be made and to be had. And I think that'll actually change the way we communicate going forward. And then I would say the other thing too is I know I personally would like to work from home a certain number of days going forward and not going back to the office permanently. So while I've missed kind of the physical interaction, the camaraderie, some of the team building activities that you can do in a physical proximity, I think that a lot of our employees have kind of benefited and have enjoyed kind of having some time, less commuting, being a little bit more efficient and having a little bit more control over their calendars. I know I've started working out a little bit more often, at times when I want to work out. So I think there are benefits. And so as we're thinking about the future of work, we're starting to engage with our employees to understand what is it that they're looking for going forward? How many days a week do they want to come in? And then weighing that with the needs of the business, the needs of our customers, and the needs of our stakeholders. So I do think these conversations are very, very important to have and will be a strategic pillar for all organizations going forward in terms of how they're going to differentiate themselves, whether it's from a recruitment perspective or servicing our customers' perspective, James.
Got it. Tracey, do you want to talk at all about how you've sort of kept engagement up and how you've managed the Payments Canada staff through all of this?
Oh, I'd be delighted. So I think it was quite an easy transition for Payments Canada to move to remote work. We were able to have 100% of our staff work outside of the office in the weeks after we closed our offices, actually within a day. Pretty much everyone was home. We operate core clearing and settlement infrastructure for Canada, and so it took a little while for us to figure out how to get everybody remote. But we were able to operate our systems even with no one in our offices. We are an interesting company at Payments Canada. We have two major areas of focus. One is the operation of those core systems, as I talked about, but then the other role we play is as a facilitator. We're a stakeholder management organization, and we're a very social organization. We have offices in Ottawa and Toronto, and the culture of the company is a very special thing based on people spending time together. So we were quite worried that we wouldn't be able to maintain the same level of engagement in a remote setting as we did in a physical setting. But I think that our culture has carried us through this COVID crisis. We've been able to maintain a strong sense of belonging. Our employees have supported each other. We've got a lot going on, right? It's a busy, busy time in payments. But I think we've really focused on creating opportunities for employees to interact. Our communications team has done a great job creating an internal company for us inside our portal. We have pages for people to share their experiences, what they do when they're not at work, parenting tips, you name it. People are able to interact through those pages on our internal portal. But we've also really made a strong effort to open our offices, and we've been able to. So our office in Ottawa has been open, closed, open, closed, open, closed. Our Toronto office has only been open and closed twice. And it's not because we require people to come to work, but because we've really tried to make sure that we've offered everything we can to our employees to help them through this pandemic. So, we have people with lots of children, and we have people with no children. We have people that have been working in their basement storeroom. We have, people who've been living in a condo by themselves. They haven't seen their families, from their home country for months and months and months. And our view has been that we want to give people options, because having options gives people flexibility. It helps create different environments for people where they want to work. I'm not sure that Payments Canada could be a 100% remote organization. I think our stakeholder mandate and our culture is based on in-person work, but that's hard, right? If you're 100% remote or you're 100% in person, that's easy. It's anything in between those two ends of the spectrum that's tricky to manage. And so we're working through that, like every other every other company. And our view is that we still don't know what's going to be right? We're still in the midst of figuring out what the impacts of this pandemic are going to be. And so we've given some guidelines to our employees. We know they're very eager to plan. There are people who are buying houses and having children, and they're in key parts of their lives where those decisions they've got to be made. And so we've tried to give guidance where we can, with a caveat that it's iterative. We just don't know. And if we were to carve in stone what we thought was the right answer, it's not going to be right. So we're trying to maintain flexibility. We're trying to anticipate what employees' needs might be. And we're just trying to help people get through this pandemic, to help them address their individual situation in the best way we can.
And that's a really good point about helping people get through and the differences in situations, because I know, we've heard a real range of experiences. We've heard from business leaders who say productivity has been really high in the pandemic and remote work has gone much better than they expected. And certainly some employees seem to really like the flexibility, to Rania's point about getting in some more workouts and having a bit more balance to the day. On the other hand, my colleagues at the Globe and Mail wrote a piece about the strain that workers who've been working remotely have been under. And it really struck a chord with people. There are a lot of people who seem to be having a hard time. How do you address the mental health challenge that this pandemic creates in a remote environment? How do you make sure that you can support the people you have through those very difficult and unique situations in certain cases? Rania, can you tell us how you've approached that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with your comments, James and Tracey. I think we're all going through this. We're all learning as we go through. I think one thing that we all did not anticipate is how long we would be going through this together. And I think that's when now it's starting to weigh a little bit more from a mental wellness perspective. And so mental wellness and mental health has become really, top of mind for absolutely everybody. And it's harder to separate work from, your personal life, because whether you're working in the kitchen or working from a bedroom, it's your work has come into your home, and it's hard to separate the two. And so, we've actually started a new platform, James, within Laurentian Bank called Courageous Conversation Series. And it's a platform that I created when I joined 6 months ago, just to start having these conversations. So whether it's about mental wellness or whether it's about, the Black community, and so let's actually bring it to the forefront, and let's talk about how different people are feeling about it. And I think as leaders, we start by being vulnerable to say, you know what, I have my up days, I have my low days. I mean, I was chatting with Tracey and I was saying, I don't know what happened. I kind of hit a wall in February in terms of, okay, enough of this. I'm ready for some sense of normalcy. So I think as a leader, it's really important to share how we feel. And I think that's authentic leadership in action, and being vulnerable, because it's something that we're all sharing. Or, when the kids are getting on your nerves, or my husband says, you want me to come for a walk? And you're like, no, I'm actually quite good. I'm going to go for a walk on my own, right? I love you, but but I think it's really important to share that, and then providing tools for our staff. So we during Mental Wellness Week, we've actually given them some tools, some activities to participate in, whether it's a yoga class or listening to a professional on mental wellness, or giving them access to, physicians or virtual classes and things that they can do. And even simple things like, putting it on your signature line that, my workday is not the same as your workday. So it's okay if I send you an email. You don't have to feel obligated to respond right away, right? Because we're so connected by laptop, your phone, right? Like there's so many platforms. And so there's that pressure of wanting to respond regularly. we're also encouraging our employees to take some time off, right? So it's really important to take some time off, take some time for yourself. I block time in my calendar, and I let people know that around lunchtime, whether I work out or I have lunch or go for a walk, where we all need to kind of, unplug slightly in this virtual world. And so I think it's just giving them a platform to say it's okay. Let's share how you're feeling, and let's make these conversations real.
That's a great point. I think a lot of people have been saving up some of those vacation days, hoping they'll be able to travel, and just haven't had a break in a long time. I want to get to talking about your clients and your stakeholders in a moment, but just sticking with your own organizations and employees for a moment. One of the things I think you touched on a moment ago, Rania, is it's not all about the pandemic. There are other issues that have really come to the forefront over the last year, and I'm thinking of things like diversity and inclusion, also ESG, which I think had a real momentum to it before the pandemic, and maybe took a brief pause, but is very much back on the radar now. Especially with the way we see work shifting, are there concrete steps that both of you are taking within your organizations to capture that momentum, to make sure that change happens from the bottom, very importantly, to the top of the organization? You're both setting examples every day as the first female CEOs of your organizations, but it's broader than that. How do you capture that momentum, make sure it's sustainable, and keep a focus on those areas as we start to go into a recovery and something more like normal life?
So Tracey, I'll jump in and then you can jump in. I mentioned Courageous Conversations. That's a new platform that we launched. I'm big on, people have heard me say, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So I'm big on, making sure we actually have metrics in the organization. And so introducing new metrics around diversity, inclusion at different levels in the organization to attract talent, to retain talent, to promote talent. That's on all of my executive scorecards. We've also included it in our financial packages that we share with our board, because again, just like numbers are important when it comes to profitability, if we really believe that, EDI initiatives are important for the organization and are going to be a competitive advantage, then why not include it in terms of our financial package that goes to the board every quarter? And I do think the pandemic, everyone talks about the climate, and the climate's absolutely critical, and that's been top of mind. But I think the social aspect of ESG is really coming to the forefront with COVID in terms of, inequality for different reasons, whether it's, distribution of vaccines or, education or daycare, or, there's so many aspects of the social element that have come into play. And so, so ESG is definitely, one of those legacies that are personally important to me in terms of the legacy we leave for our customers, our shareholders, and our customers and our employees, and is definitely going to be a multi-year journey, but we're well on our way. Tracey?
Do you want to speak to that, Tracey?
I think there's not much more to add. That's a very comprehensive plan. And I would say, we're a small organization at Payments Canada, and so things are a little bit more visible when there are fewer people. And I would say that the pandemic has brought these things to the front because we're not distracted in the pandemic like we are, or like we were before the pandemic. And everybody's had a front row seat, and we have steady news feeds. Everybody has multiple screens. Usually there's one that's got news on it. So I think we're a more informed country now as a result of the fact that we're more singularly focused on what we get through our screens. And I think diversity, inclusion, those are two things that needed more attention. It was slow to ramp up. James, I'll reference the series that has been running in the Globe and Mail around gender equity. These are things that it's taken us a long time to get to gender parity on boards. We're still working towards that. And I think the diversity journey it's really a priority now, and that will be a positive outcome of this pandemic. And as leaders, it's on us to make sure that momentum is maintained, even as we exit this current situation.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, James, and I think in addition to being selective, Tracey, like you said, in terms of being well informed, I think people have generally been starting to reflect a little bit more in terms of that sense of purpose. And I think for organizations, that's going to be critical too, in terms of attracting talent and retaining talent. Everybody wants to be part of a bigger purpose. And if anything, I would say this pandemic, I mean, I've been a banker my entire career, and it was only through the pandemic that I appreciated that banking is really a noble profession. And I would say even working with Payments Canada, you start appreciating the importance of, banking being part of the fabric of an economy and a society. And it's so critical to the success of any country, particularly when you're going through a pandemic. So I think being part of a noble profession also generated that level of excitement. And so having that sense of purpose has also become a very a social movement that's happening as well, that it's beyond what do you do, but why are you doing it? And what's the bigger purpose that you're a part of?
That's a great point, and it brings us to the way all of this has impacted your clients and your stakeholders. Obviously, a lot has been done for them. We've come through this without major hiccups or blowups in the banking sector or the payment sector that I'm aware of. If I'm wrong, anybody can give me a call in confidence. But it's also changed behavior a lot. We've got clients who are banking differently, who are making payments very differently. And when you think about what has changed, what do you think will be most significant in a lasting way? What is going to accelerate or change the way we go about making payments and doing our day-to-day banking that is going to be permanent when we come out of this?
Why don't I start on that one? I think the initial lockdown that we were experiencing just over a year ago was very illuminating, because it revealed how reliant we still are in some regards on paper and process. So I had the I was going to say misfortune, but I had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to send a wire. And I had to go to the branch and fill out the paperwork. And that was a big deal. I had to go to the downtown branch. That's where the business account was located. And, I had to stand in line to get into the branch, and then I had to fill out the forms. And I just was really struck by how much opportunity we have to digitize banking experiences and payments experiences in particular. And I think that, we've been holding on to some things in the banking industry that over the last year we've let go of, like electronic signatures are okay. We've really learned how to effectively consider the risk, evaluate the risk, because when you can't get a document in front of a person to put pen to paper, there are alternatives that have to be considered, and there may be some risk with that. But we saw the financial services industry really flex and work to make sure that their clients could do what they want. We saw innovation during this pandemic from bankers that has never been seen in that kind of speed before. The digitization of experiences, as they relate to payments, have been very, very significant. And I think that was a bit of an eye opener for customers on the receiving end, that, oh, my bank did that. And the ability now, we can tap for transactions up to $250, which is pretty much everything you buy. So it's we've seen some real movement and some give in some areas that I think will help us to continue to evolve payments. And we've seen, the shift globally in areas of focus. Now we're thinking about, okay, how do we move payments in real time around the world? Digital currency is another thing that we're starting to talk more about than we had anticipated before the pandemic. So I think digitization is a big positive outcome in all industries, and in payments in particular. And we'll see, I expect, continued momentum and innovation in that regard.
Yeah. So what I would add is, in terms of, I totally agree with Tracey. I think that COVID has really accelerated the adoption of digital solutions. I think many institutions in the financial space have been kind of moving towards offering up new digital platforms, but they weren't being adopted because as humans, we tend to be lazy. And so if I know how to go and do a wire, I don't want to learn how to use a new digital platform or to do it digitally. And I think when COVID hit and people started realizing, oh, in terms of checks, I don't actually have a physical check because I'm stuck at home and my physical check is in the office and I can't go get it. Oh, and by the way, I need two signatories. And so, if the CEO is sitting in their home and their CFO is sitting in their other home, so how are we going to get those signatures done? So, the need for a wet signature. So I do think that, in pandemics or in times of crisis, innovation does accelerate, particularly when you're all united to solve for one key thing, which is how do we get money into people's hands? And I think working with the government, working with Payments Canada, I think all the banks rose to the occasion in terms of, okay, we can't do checks. So how are we going to actually get all of these relief payments into the hands of the consumers so that we can keep the economy going? And it was amazing how quickly we all collaborated together, not just as one bank, but as the entire financial industry came together with Payments Canada as well as with the government to be able to deliver on that. And I think if you kind of do any studies in terms of how long people need to use something new for it to stick, right? I think, it's usually 6 to 10 months. Well, we've been in this for a year. So I think a lot of the new learned behaviors are not going to reverse back. So cash is on the decline. Checks are on the decline. I mean, I still remember sending my daughter to get a loaf of bread, and I gave her some cash, and she came back afterwards yelling at me saying, "Mom, they wouldn't accept cash." And so that's the beginning of a change of behavior. So it's not only consumers are using less cash, stores are accepting less cash. So we're on this journey in terms of digitization, and it's here to stay. And so I think all institutions and all of our customers are also thinking, how do I sell my products digitally? So even though they may have been fighting it in terms of I need a physical bricks and mortar to sell my product, COVID has taught many of our stakeholders that, you really should figure out how you're going to adopt a digital solution to be able to deliver that solution, along with the appropriate supporting service to differentiate yourself in that market.
And just to follow up on that quickly, I mean, I think you're right. Cash is on the decline. We're seeing more transactions being done digitally, and that adoption rate, is likely to stick. But the old way of doing it hasn't gone away entirely. Cash isn't gone. When I pass by a branch in my neighborhood of one bank or another, there's some foot traffic going through it. So how do you think about how you balance, where to place your investment and at what pace? Has this given you an opportunity to step on the gas on digital transformation, understanding that Laurentian had already moved pretty significantly in this direction already, reducing transaction banking at your branches and moving more to advice. How much does this give you a chance to push the pace on your digitization?
Yeah, so what I would say, James, is, I think Laurentian was ahead of its time in terms of getting cash out of our branch network. And so, we weren't heavily impacted from a COVID perspective on that front. We still have a lot of work to do from an automation perspective in terms of creating efficiencies internally from a paper perspective. As Tracey mentioned, in terms of, e-signatures, we've moved towards that to accommodate all of our clients. And so I think, I can speak for Laurentian. We're looking to kind of double down on our digital transformation and make it more efficient, more customer friendly. Consumers are looking for faster transactions, accessibility anywhere, anytime, and convenience. And so then the trick becomes, how are you going to differentiate yourself? So why bank with us and not someone else? And that's where, advice can differentiate itself. Data becomes the new currency. So how are we going to use the data to provide you with a differentiated service going forward? Sense of purpose. Why bank with Laurentian versus another institution? So I think it opens up a whole bunch of different strategic questions that we're challenging ourselves on. And we're collectively working on it internally as a leadership team. But digital is definitely here to stay. And it is a big part of our strategy going forward.
And Tracey, we're probably fortunate that we've been moving down the road towards payments modernization for some time now, even before the pandemic hit. And you've got some major launches coming. You've got Lynx, which is the large value transfer system, coming online in a matter of months, aiming to have the real-time rail, which is more about retail and business payments for sometime in 2022. Can you put in context for us, where will that position us internationally when it comes to payments modernization? And what are the next steps? What's still to come as we try and push Canada's payment system into a more modern era?
Yeah, thanks, James. As you probably know, modernization has been the number one focus for Payments Canada for a couple of years. And we are going to be launching Lynx, our high-value payment system, later this year. Our focus is on faster, flexible, and secure payments. The real-time rail has been a big area of focus of modernization. I do just want to call out some of our other activities, though, because it's been a very significant and ambitious program, and we've made changes not only to the high value payment system, but also to our batch system. So we started implementing changes in 2018. We refreshed the application on our batch system at the end of 2020. We will launch links this year in 2021 and a real-time payment system in 2022. We won't be first with real-time payments, obviously, but we're not last. We're middle of the pack in that, which has given us an opportunity to learn and take lessons from other jurisdictions that have launched real-time payments before us. We're launching our real-time payment system with ISO 20022 messaging, which is a message standard that allows data that is about the payment to actually travel with the payment. And I think that's going to be a game changer for a lot of Canadian businesses because it means that they will be able to manage some straight-through processing. They'll be able to streamline their processes because the data about that payment will be right there. So I think we're going to really benefit in Canada from that ISO 20022 standard. We'll also have that standard on the high-value payment system. What's next for Canada from an enhancement perspective? Well, it's a big job to upgrade all of your payment system, and so we don't want too many more huge projects like this. We're going to be focusing on continual enhancements, but it's in Canada's best interest for us to focus on how we can continue to add value for Canadians. And as we think about real-time payments, they're not only good for Canadian businesses and Canadian consumers, they're also very attractive for fraudsters. And so we have to make sure that we ensure the security. We make sure that payors and payees are authenticated as they initiate and receive payments through that real-time payment system. And we're going to see use cases that we never imagined. We're quite confident that as a platform for innovation, real-time rail, it's a game changer for Canada. So we'll continue to work with our members and our stakeholders to understand what kind of payment experiences they want to provide for their customers, and we'll make sure that we're there so that they can do that.
And I'm glad you raised that. Just in the brief time we have left, there's a lot of promise and opportunity to this, but we should also talk about the risks and the challenges that come with this new world, because we've got, as you say, real-time payments happening more often. We've got a lot of people making digital decisions and using e-signatures from a variety of different devices in different places all around the world. Rania, maybe you can tell us a bit about what keeps you up at night about this new digital world and how you go about trying to stay a step ahead of what could go wrong.
Yeah, so as Tracey mentioned, it's the fraudsters. So it's the cybersecurity, and it's never really the technology that's the issue. It's the change management, the process management, the re-education of your employees, your customers, the various stakeholders, and it's ongoing. I mean, the fraudsters wake up every day, and their one goal in life is to actually defraud the stakeholders. And so, how do you stay ahead of it? How do you keep educating everybody? And the thing is, everyone's going to get frauded. There will be a cyber attack at some point for pretty much all institutions. So it's how do you respond? So in terms of preparing for that, making sure your processes are continuously up to date, bringing in people externally to actually hack your system to make sure you understand what your vulnerabilities are. Because as Tracey mentioned, innovation technology is evolving on an ongoing basis, but it really comes down to making sure our people are educated, our processes are constantly updated, and that we're always on high alert.
That's great. I think we're pretty much out of time. Tracey, do you want the last word on that?
No, I just would like to thank Rania. I'd like to congratulate her on her first 6 months. It's been a real pleasure to have the conversation with you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tracey. It's been an absolute pleasure actually working with you over the last few years and bringing payments modernization to life.
Well, thank you both. It's a time of great disruption, but it's a time of excitement too. And I wish you all the best as we go forward with the rest of this year. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Great. Thanks, James.